I would request Dr. Deepak Mishra, who is with us, for moderating the second session. We know he is very active at so many platforms, and he is presently the Chairman Scientific Committee of UPSOS also. Dr. Deepak Mishra, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
most
audible.
welcome. Yeah, you are audible. So please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. First of all, now we are going to start the. Ma'am, I'm audible.
Yeah,
I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you. So we are going to start the second session of the glaucoma education program, and we are lucky to have a wonderful speakers who are the teachers with us. This session is usually planned for the seeing the management portion of the glaucoma, and for that, the most important thing is common thing is the medical management. And in the medical management, there are a lot of issues. As you, when anyone prescribe the glaucoma treatment, then you have to know that usually patient have to put the eye drops lifetime. So there is lot of confusion and how to select which medication is best for whom and like that. I would like to invite Professor Madhu ma'am for his talk on the medical management on the glaucoma. And I'm seeing the resident. For that, I can tell you only one thing, that it is a dream to hear Madhu ma'am and the help of GSI and the help other office bearers. You are lucky to hear them in this COVID crisis and learn a lot. Madhu ma'am, please.
Thank you, Deepak, and thank you, GSI and organizers and everybody. GSI is very close to all of our hearts, all those who are really glaucoma people, and good to have Harsh and other friends here. I really felt very nice, but I saw almost half the participants are from Sitapurai Hospital. So I don't think this introduction is really required. But what is really important is because of availability of newer diagnostic and therapeutic modalities and evidence-based data, it's become very complex. And the irony of it is that every ophthalmologist thinks that they know glaucoma management, they know the medical management, and that is their forte. But unfortunately, it's really ripped with so many challenges that that's the place where most of the people tend to go wrong. Oops, sorry, I've opened the wrong presentation. Just a moment, just give me a moment. Can you all see it now?
It can be seen.
Yes.
All right. Yes, yes. So I'm just moving on. So medications, the thing remains same only, but so far we had the medications only for lowering IOP. But other factors which have come into account now are the quality of life, truly, adherence, persistence, because we know so much. And the drugs have come, they're so expensive.
मधु म्यूट हो गया भाई।
Madhu ma'am, you are muted.
Ma'am, kindly unmute yourself.
Madhu, unmute.
Yeah.
Yes,
I've done it now. Actually, the host had muted me, so I was not able to. Can you see the screen and see me now? Because I can't see my screen.
नहीं screen दिख रही है, उसको full करो.
मिल गया. Can you see now? Can you hear now?
Full करो.
Ma'am, it's not on the slideshow mode.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now it's come now. All right.
Yeah.
So the multiple factors which are actually causing a lot of problems for the people who are who need to deal with this medication. So why do we really need it? Right? Their primary mode of therapy in angle, open angle, in angle closure, secondary, in all the glaucomas we need some time or other medicines are required irrespective of everything. So what do we have with us? We had pilocarpines from the time that I remember as a student, but now we have beautiful things like prostaglandins, beta blockers, alpha-2 agonists, CAI inhibitors, oral topical fixed drug combinations, and latest we added ROCK inhibitors. So this was considered at one time the dinosaur, but unfortunately it is not. This drug, I wouldn't go into details of it, but what I would want to tell, other than what everybody thinks, this also improves trabecular flow because of pulling the scleral spur. So therefore, it's one of the most important drugs when we're dealing with PACG, sudden rise of pressure and a lot of rise of pressure. Then with aphakic and pseudophakic glaucomas and pre-laser procedures, this is the drug which we have to keep in our inventorium and we need to prescribe a little more. Only thing is we should not be using it when we're dealing with the uveitic and neovascular glaucoma, and absolute no-no when it comes to malignant glaucoma. It is contraindicated. So prostaglandins they're ruling the roost, and there's so much of coaching by medical representatives that I don't need to really talk too much. But yes, important is that as far as we have now, they are as a single drug, they can reduce the IOP most, and they can flatten the diurnal curve, which is really important in glaucoma management. So there are not too many contraindications for them. That's the good part of it. The first line drug in management of glaucoma is not really a challenge now, because with generics available now, the cost is definitely reduced. But few things we have to keep in mind that where we should not be really using, and those things are again NVG uveitic glaucomas, people who've had herpes, it gets reactivated, and people who are prone to CME or had uveitis. Uveitis is a little question mark. Very much quiet uveitis, one attack is all right, but otherwise does give rise to uveitis itself also. In surgery, it's important that we should be stopping it before the cataract surgery, and also should start preoperative steroids if you want to prevent CME, and along with the Nepalact or something like that. Post-operatively, because eye is at least to some extent inflamed, is giving its own prostaglandins. So 3 to 4 weeks till the blood aqueous barrier is not stabilized, we may not use them. The beta blockers were the first liners, but then they're really no longer first liners, but they can be used as a first liner. There is no hard and fast rule, but only in the patients where they have 20 to 25% reduction required, like OHT or early glaucoma. However, challenges we need to remember to modulate the treatment, that is, they don't increase the ocular blood flow. On the contrary, at night they do not work, and they have lots of systemic side effects. So therefore, we have to be very, very careful. Ocular effects are very few, and that is a good thing. Therefore, we can use in very special situations, like we can use them post surgery. We can use them in children. We can use them in pregnant ladies. We are not supposed to use them in the first trimester ever. This is also a point to be remembered, and never to be used in NTGs. With that, contraindications, I'm sure all the kids know, so I don't need to talk about it. This is another group, brimonidine. Earlier, we used to use aproclonidine also, but brimonidine is, again, good drug, but it has got ocular side effects. That is, it gives a lot of allergy, and patients are not very happy with it. The lower concentration is working better. And what we can actually really do it, that may not use as a first line, but for a second line is a good drug. And for all the people who are a beta blocker challenge, this is a good drug. But remember that it enhances the cardiovascular effects. Therefore, it should not be used with either antidepressants or with anti-prolactin dysfunction drugs. These two are contraindicated, and we never use it in children below 6 years of age because it crosses blood aqueous barrier. Again, this can be used with fixed drug combination, so that's one good thing. And normal tension glaucoma indicated, but actually is truly speaking, it doesn't work in that. It's got no neuroprotection role. This is the safest drug for pregnancy first trimester. That is a point to be remembered. Topical CAIs, we've got dorzolamide, brinzolamide. The range is same for the beta blockers, alpha-2 agonist CAIs is same, is thrice a day. And there are not too many side effects systemically or even in the eye. But important point here again is they're cross-sulfa allergic. They're good in children. In post-operative, there's a little bit of question mark because of CAI inhibitor, and they are available in the FDT role with timolol and promolol. ROCK inhibitors. These are the newest drugs in our armamentarium, Ripatec and Nitalo. Both these drugs work well, but Ripatec is much lesser. I don't think it gives more than, in our hands, it doesn't give more than 10 to 15% reduction in IOP. But Nitalo is giving better this thing. Some people have, Rocklatan is not available in our country, but this is a report which is a little not so desirable. That with the Nitalo, which they were saying that it will work very well in post-operative and in corneal edemas. In slightly compromised corneas also, this is showing a lot of epithelial edema and a corneal edema. So probably this is because of, and it's reversible. The good thing is that if a patient has it, you can reverse it. So in that case, it may be little important to remember that we should not be really using this drug in the patients who have borderline compromised corneas. And in case this happens, the drug is to be stopped forthwith. Oral carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, I think everybody knows enough about it, so I don't need to really say, but again, this cross-sulfur reactivity is very important. And also another point is that if used long-term, it can lead to aplastic anemia, and that can actually lead to death. So therefore, bone marrow depression is never to be forgotten, and also metabolic acidosis. So this is a good short-term measure we can give for a week or so when there is a very high pressure, but this is not something that we can consider as a long-term treatment. This is the same thing. This we need to really use when there are acute attacks. Patients are vomiting, throwing up, they're not tolerating Diamox. This comes good, but precautions again. A good history is required. The patient should not be having a cardiac failure, which is precipitated and made worse, or a renal failure. Glycerol is not very often needed, but yes, you can use it when you are trying to buy time. Suppose you're going for a surgery. You want to get off your timolol because this affects the surgery. Or for that matter, patient is using all the 4 drugs. Glycerol can be used, and more so when the eyes are small. Vitreous is actually a lot. It means it can push a lot. Hypermannitol is a very good option in a preoperative time also. So how do we initiate therapy? We have only basically 2 principles. One, we need to achieve the target. And second principle is that we need to have the diagonal flat. And third thing which is added now or otherwise also is the quality of life. If we are ruining a quality of life of a patient, it's not worth treating glaucoma when he's so unhappy. And all the patients must be explained clearly about punctal occlusion, because the efficacy of a drug increases and systemic side effects decrease. So selection of initial drug will depend on what is the target IOP. And factors to keep in mind for balancing is balance between safety and efficacy. The drug should be affordable. Patient should be able to comply with it in the schedule and dosing. Patient should be able to persist. It's not that I'm not able to buy, I'm in a village, and the safety, that it should not be that a life of a person is threatened by a beta blocker. There's no point getting your IOP lower. Monotherapy is ideal. So when we require a monotherapy, if a patient requires 30% or a little more, we start with the, what is that called, prostaglandins. But if it's 20-25%, then it's any of the other drugs that we talked about, they all can be used. It reduces this risk of adverse events, which is really true, because when you're giving 2 drugs, you don't know which is actually acting adverse. Suppose people start a Combiga and this thing. Now you're not realizing the patient is getting actually allergic to which one of them, and how much effective each one is also is not known. So therefore, unless and until there is a major contraindication, we should start with a single drug, because single drug is a little more on the preservative at the outset. If you have to add, which is different thing altogether, but it's convenient and the cost also is lower when we start with one drug. So we choose to start with the monotherapy, start in bird's eye. Otherwise, I start in both eyes and choose a review period, which is the peak of the drug. So review period for each one's of a different, I'll show you the next slide. If the IOP at peak is seen, all right, do a office DVT, and if it's staying non-fluctuant, carry on. If IOP reduction expected is not enough, then what do we do? So if it's less than 15%, then we can add a drug, Or else, suppose we have started with a beta blocker and we are getting an IOP reduction, whatever is expected, 25%, 20%, we are getting say 5%, 10%. There's no point adding a prostaglandin to it. Rather remove that and add a prostaglandin. And when we require 20%, let's not switch on to directly prostaglandins, because something we should have. Glaucoma is a lifelong disease and it's not a day's job that you've done today and tomorrow the patient will run away or will go somewhere else. So it's important to remember peak effect and washout both. And I've simplified beta blocker, 2 weeks peak, 6 weeks washout. Myotics, 3 hours peak, 1 week washout. Same thing, this whole slide can be remembered. Minimum washout period for carbonic anhydrase is 72 hours. So in the crisis, in the need, if you really need to add a drug and you want to see impact later, I would say like a patient comes say with a 30 intraocular pressure and risk is advanced. Now I'm scared starting a monotherapy. What will I do? I'll start with the Diamox, right? Give for a week with Diamox and then the patient to come after 10 days. So by the time patient comes, the pressure has come down, Diamox is washed out. And then you will know exactly, and then you can add another, like you can't really add right away, but generally you will have an idea to add another drug. Clinical utility is after staging the drug call, the patient follow-up that I've talked about already. So which drug to choose? 20%, you can use a beta blocker or any of those, any of the drugs which we have talked about. But beta blockers and NTG are bad option. 30-35%, there is no doubt about it that it is still a PGA, one of the PGAs. ROCK inhibitors are claiming to be that much, but on the ground, what I'm finding is not actually 30-35%. Whenever I withdrawn a patient out of a prostaglandin for a CME or something, started this, and the IOP drop is not more than 20-25%. So this is very important to be remembered. If single is not working, then we go for a fixed drug therapy, that is fixed drugs, and there are so many of them. There are advantages of these fixed drugs, but we must understand the principle first, like which drug we should combine. So if we are using one inflow, it's better to combine with one outflow. So what are we having on inflow? Like beta receptors, beta blockers, alpha receptors, alpha 2 carbonic anhydrase inhibitors on CIs. Outflow, trabecular, pilocarpine. ROCK inhibitors, they are also working on trabecular. UV scleral, PGA and ROCK inhibitors work on both. ROCK inhibitors all don't work actually on trabecular. They all work on trabecular, but only Natolo works on the uveoscleral also. This is a point to be remembered because this can be a tricky question in the MCQ, that which ROCK inhibitor works on PGA and ROCK both. PGA and trabecular both. So Temirol is the king of fixed drug therapy. Almost all the drugs which are combined are with pilocarpine. And it ensures adherence, reduces preservative, and gives a better ocular surface. So these are the mechanisms. This is a pure theory slide for kids. So choice of fixed combinations. Now the patients who are now not suitable for beta blockers for all the contraindications. We have another combination called brinzolamide with bromonidine. In patients where we can have 4 drugs in 2 bottles. Like if Timolol is even not contraindicated, suppose we have a Timolol. So, for example, I would say if we have a combination of bromonidine with brinzolamide, we can have with PGA with a beta blocker. So these are the 4 drugs which they make a lot of difference in the quality of patient's life. Patients are far happier with 4 drugs in 2 bottles. So follow-up when to call need to be individualized, patient on patient. If one has to choose ideal, then it is at the peak duration and then add switch whatever you do. Once target is achieved, let the patients be comfortable. If pre-perimetric glaucoma or mild glaucoma, 1 year follow-up is more than enough. Moderate glaucoma, not so much, 6 months, little more. In severe glaucomas, we have to be very, very careful in following them on the medical medication. If glaucoma is not progressing, especially in OHD and PPG, target may be set higher. Like suppose a patient of OHD, we don't need to have a target of 14 or 15. If a patient of OHD is okay with a single drug at 18, 19, 20, it's all right if it's not progressing. So in case the target is coming very low, we can choose a drug and have a higher target to save the drug for later. If progression persists, then we have to look for these things: nocturnal hypertension, systemic or topical steroids. They could be sitting very quietly. Recent major surgery or a blood loss, refractive surgery, recheck central corneal thickness. Sometimes we are really falsely guided by it. Shirshashan, hydrotherapy. These are small things, but everything is controlled and this is still going on. So if there is a patient who's got that palish disc, as Harsh said just now, careful gonioscopy to rule out PSEG is a must. 24 hours DVT is indicated in these people and not the office DVT. Treatment is usually we initiate with the PGA, NTG, unilateral disease, disc pallor. Please investigate for neurological conditions. Do not use timolol. Neuroprotection is a hogwash. There is no drug. And what the company claims that brimonidine is protector. Truly, if you do a study with timolol, obviously brimonidine will work out as a protector. So it's no good. So there's some new drugs. I just want you all to know the names: ROCK inhibitors, adenosine receptor agonists, prostanoid receptors have come in a big way, and small interfering RNAs. So this is trabodinosone. This is under research, and if we have it, it will make a difference. Prostanoid receptors are going to come sooner than later, and they are add-on to PGA. So therefore, in that, we are going to have this important ONO 9054. This drug is supposed to be giving a better effect than prostaglandins. 4.85 times, there is a chance of giving a better 35%. So these drugs we have to remember. These are small interfering RNAs. They're good for beta blockers. They silence the gene. They don't work as a beta blocker. So therefore, the gene will be silenced in the eye and you will not have any side effects of beta blockers. Preservative modulation, I don't need to teach. Medical representatives are doing more than enough their job. Delivery systems is important. This nanoparticle is extremely good. By itself, it's nothing, but it carries the drug inside the eye more easily because they are bioinert, degradable, and mucoadhesive. So therefore, the same drug which we are not able to put inside the anterior chamber so much, it will take the drug more. So this is something that we need to know. And with that, I would only say take home is we start medical management only if patient has glaucoma. It is not that patient without glaucoma or without OHT with risk factors, we start away. Assess baseline and we set a target. Reduce IOP enough to halt or delay the damage. Least IOP is not always required. If the least IOP is not required, please enhance because the less number of drugs will improve the quality of life. Minimum concentration of the drugs to have the maximum effect. We need to have them cost effective, safe, minimal side effects, max adherence, and best quality of life. And the aim is only one: the vision outlives the patient's life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a crisp and wonderful talk for us.
That was
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.